Welcome to the Showgirl Connection. I'm your host, Luann Chesick. So this is our second episode, and we promised to bring Diane Christiansen back to talk about what it was like to really be a showgirl and what it took to be a showgirl. So Diane, what does it take to be a showgirl?
Well, it's great to be back.
Thank you. Oh, and it's so great to have you. Thank you for coming back a second time.
So great to be here.
We just had to have you back. There's so much to talk about.
We do have a lot.
And we still need to hear a little bit about, you're going to read something from your book too. And
I'm very excited
about
that.
About your book.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
For me, I think one of the most exciting things to find out about our fellow show people is how they got started and where they started. And I know I love your story. You've told me your story of being with the ballet company and being way too tall.
A lot of us.
Yes.
That's a very common story, very common thread.
I went from small town in Illinois with my mentor to New York City to audition for the Rockettes when I was 17.
Wow.
I was still in high school. And I had prepared for this audition for 4 years because I didn't start dancing when I was 3. Started dancing when I was 13.
And that's late.
4 years later,
us, yeah.
I was auditioning for the Rockettes.
Wow.
So that was pretty amazing. And I made it. I didn't dance with the Rockettes, though. Well, the story's in the book. You have to read them.
You have to read them.
But I did take a side trip to Montreal, and I was introduced to the dazzling world of French cabaret. And that's where I started. I started in Montreal at my mentor's connection. She connected me with the rudest dancers. And I went to Montreal at 18 to be a covered dancer.
Okay.
And I started working with the rudest dancers at 18. And I brought a chapter from the book.
Oh, good.
That shows how I transitioned from covered dancer to showgirl.
Oh, good. Wow.
Because they're two different things.
Absolutely.
And showgirls were referred to as dancing nudes back then. That was the new name for showgirls. But really, they were the same thing. I think Don Arden broke them down into two different categories in Jubilee. You were in Jubilee.
Tall nudes and short nudes.
Right.
Yeah.
But were they called showgirls still?
Well, in Hallelujah Hollywood, there were showgirls.
Okay.
And then after Hallelujah Hollywood, which was Jubilee, they combined the dancing nudes with the showgirls.
Okay. So they're the same thing. In some shows, we danced a little more than others.
Right.
And I don't know, every show I was in that I was a showgirl, I danced.
Yes.
We had good choreography.
Me too, but you were still limited to how much you could dance with the big costumes.
It's true. And you learned your choreography. I know that our choreography at the Lido was designed around the headdresses. I mean, it wasn't just the showgirl walk. Sometimes it was. With the evil seahorse head in Paris, it was.
Yes.
But we had the pink hats at the Lido.
Pink hats.
And they were extraordinary hats, pointed pink feathers. And
they were about 6 feet tall.
They were, and nobody put them on us. They were lowered down from the ceiling in the backstage rafters at the Lido, which was an extraordinary stage, obviously, and placed on our heads. Yeah. And then all of the choreography was from the shoulders down, and it was cute choreography.
It was really cute.
It was really sexy.
That was a fun number.
Adorable, and once you got used to balancing that 35-pound headdress, it was really fun.
And it was balanced pretty evenly.
It was.
Because it was like a big circular.
It was like a point.
Christmas tree.
It's true.
Your head.
I have a picture of it on my Instagram account. It wasn't my photo, but it was a publicity photo for the pink hats. And I wish that I owned it because it's a beautiful photograph of all the dancing nudes on stage in their pink hats.
Well, when they closed to Stardust, there was one of those pink hats left.
Really?
And it auctioned off for, I'm going to say, close to $10,000.
Really?
Yes.
And those were Falco designs.
That's right.
They were Falco, all those costumes, and in Paris as well. But
Yeah.
and Ollie Lido, I think, was their longest running show at the Lido de Paris, both in Paris and in Las
13
Vegas.
years in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Don Arden
Yeah.
and Miss Bluebell.
Yeah, where all the other ones, usually they'd last like 2 or 3 years, and they swap them
Exactly.
out, because there were 13 editions in 33 years.
That's right.
In Vegas.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that, I heard, was probably the most expensive show they did at the Lido. And I had heard through the grapevine that it was the longest running. So it was an exciting show to be in. I even remember the music. I mean, we danced to Earth, Wind, and Fire in our African number. We danced to Getaway. It was the most dynamically paced show I've ever been in. Don Arden was a genius
He
at
was.
that. He really
was.
really knew pace.
Nobody liked Don Arden.
Nobody did.
And trafficking.
Oh,
Because he could have
staging.
100 people coming off and on the stage.
Yeah,
And just,
and it worked.
it worked.
As long as you could see and you could walk, it could work. But if you couldn't see and you had a headdress stuck in your
That could be
eyeballs,
scary.
which happened to me in Paris, I should read you that chapter. But I
I'd
didn't
love
bring
to,
it.
yeah, I'd love to.
Oh.
I can hardly, well, I've read your book, it's fabulous.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I would love to read a little today.
Oh, I would love that.
I thought it would be fun to talk about, to read the portion of a chapter of how I became a showgirl after being
Okay.
hired as a covered dancer. So, would you like to hear that now?
I would love to hear that
Okay.
now.
All right.
Yeah.
I brought a few pages to read.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Good.
this is chapter 4 in my book, and it's called Getting Out of Dodge. And it was in 1969, and this took place during my first job as a Rudis dancer. I think I'd been a dancer for 3 or 4 months, covered dancer, and I had not met Tibor Rudis yet, our producer, but he came into town, he came into Montreal, he watched the show, and this is what it's about. I enjoyed the perks of being a Rudis dancer, my first job in Montreal, Canada, especially when people like Liberace came to the show. He sent the entire cast buckets of champagne backstage and sat so close to the stage that he was engulfed in our feathers. And he loved it. We loved him. We loved Liberace. He was the first celebrity to attend one of my shows, and it felt marvelously glamorous. Just when I was beginning to have fun, Tibor Rudis showed up, like God. All the dancers knew he was in town watching the show. We were several months into the illustrious new French spectacular Le Caf Conque, and the same name as the theater. And it was the dazzling and modern version of a typical French revue, a Toulouse-Lautrec of 1929, typical pure Parisian style. It included the can-can and several modern dance numbers, and a comical star reminiscent of Signor Wences, the famous ventriloquist. The stars of our show were often great plate spinners, or the Flying Walendas, or something similar to Las Vegas, where the likes of Siegfried and Roy, Wayne Newton, Elvis, and the Argentinian gauchos were the reigning headliners. I remember everyone being on their toes that night when Mr. Rudis arrived, giving our most energetic performances. I was suffering from a pulled hamstring due to our can-can. We all pushed ourselves to the max that night. We were not honored with Tibor's presence backstage that evening, as he and his consort Lee were weary from traveling and retired early. There was a company meeting and rehearsal called for the following morning. We all arrived around 10 in the morning, ready to rehearse. We gathered on stage where Mr. Rudis and his precious Lee gave notes to the company. Notes are critiques or constructive criticisms in the theater, or flat-out insults, depending on who the producer, choreographer, or line captain was. Mr. Rudis was rather comical in his own way, and I'm not sure if he meant to be or if it was his Hungarian, Jewish, and Australian demeanor was simply entertaining. He often gave notes to our mentors instead of us, or sent notes indirectly through the line captain. I don't recall any notes that day. All I remember is that he wanted to meet with Ava, another 5'9" Czech showgirl who had recently come into the show, and me. Bobby, our line captain, came up to me and asked if I could stay a bit longer to meet Mr. Rudis in the dressing room after company rehearsal. Oh my God, I thought, what did I do? Surely he wasn't going to fire me just when I had settled into my role. Carolee and I had our first apartment in one of the hippest cities in the world in 1970. We had Sunday off each week, days of free love in this magnificent city. We met real people of Montreal and the Flower Children. We could be weekend hippies and trip around in the mountains, smoke pot and be free here. This couldn't end. It was just getting started. Carolee had met a radio DJ, and she was dating him. Of course, she was 16, being Australian, and he was 10 or 12 years older. That's where Carolee and I differed. She wanted to do all the grown-up things, and I just wanted to be 18. Meeting Mr. Rudis face-to-face was obviously freaking me out. All the girls seemed a little intimidated by him. I arrived backstage, and there he was, with Lee, his concubine, and company manager Colin Wilson and Bobby. Thank God Bobby was there. She was everyone's rock. Mr. Rudis was trying to be light and comical. He liked me, I could tell. I had a sense of humor and could make him laugh. I'd learned well, having grown up with an alcoholic father, how to humor men. I fancied myself the equivalent of a modern-day Fanny Bryce, and Mr. Rudis my Florence Ziegfeld. I would spew out funny remarks here and there, and he would chuckle. I liked making him laugh. I was a bold teenager and skilled in comedy. However, I was still vulnerable, sensitive, and insecure. Colin reported that my skills were not strong enough for the can-can now that I had a pulled hamstring. Also, I was taller than most of the covered dancers. So Colin pointed out Diane would make a better dancing nude. She's tall, and now that she's hurt, she can rest her hamstring. Nude was the modern word in the dance world for showgirl. But I started my mind racing back to my mentor's final words to me, do not dance topless. Her voice filled my soul. You won't become the dancer you can be if you're a showgirl. The horror must have shown on my face because then Colin delivered the final blow. The only way we can keep you in the show is if you become a nude. He embodied zero qualities as a human. Lee chimed in her bougie American accent. Darling, you're tall. You have so much natural charisma on stage. You really are an actress out there, a performer more than a technician. My ears perked up. Had I heard her correctly? Actress? Oh yeah! I lit up as only a naive 18-year-old could. That's what I am, an actress. I felt surprised knowing someone saw me for who I actually was. Bobby added, you sell the numbers better than any girl on that stage. The compliment felt soothing, like an ointment, and it helped me feel a little better. But then someone delivered the punchline. I don't remember who said it. I was in an alternate reality in my head where the planet had cracked loudly. I felt afraid of becoming one of them. Someone said, so let's take a look at your breasts. What? I murmured, who? Me? Everything started moving in slow motion at this point, and I only heard about every fifth or sixth word people were saying. Bobby quickly and sweetly interjected, let's go try on some pasties. The nudes wore silvery, star-shaped sequin pasties that covered most of the breast. They knew I was completely freaked out. Tibor kept walking around with one arm tucked under his armpit and the other covering his mouth, pacing. I don't remember anything from this point on. I returned from the dressing room with Bobby in shock. I disrobed from the waist up and stood before him like a statue. This would be the first man to ever look at my bare breasts. He was polite, quick, and professional. Lee hastily added, oh, very nice. Colin may have glanced, I couldn't tell. That was it. They left and spoke with Bobby on the way out. As I pulled up my robe, Bobby came back and calmly told me that I would be a dancing nude opposite Ava, the Czech showgirl, with the first boob job I'd ever seen. She was a gorgeous blonde with rocks for boobs. We would ride down from the ceiling in giant lighted stars to open the show, and I would learn all of the dancing nude parts of the girl who was leaving. Bobby asked me to report to duty the next day, and she would personally train me. I believe I continued protesting because Bobby reassured me it was no big deal. I'd never revealed my breast to anyone before today. Not only did Mary Lou's words haunt me, but the mere thought of going on stage topless horrified me. Bobby and Pearl Ho had danced topless in the show, and I loved the two of them most of all, and that was all I could hang on to in that moment. more to
Wow.
come.
Yeah.
So I didn't go along easily. I went kicking and screaming into my showgirl status.
Wow. No, I loved your book. I loved your book. And
Thank you.
you're so honest of
Well, yeah.
what it was like.
Aren't our stories interesting?
Mhm, they really are.
I love everybody's stories. I mean, how did you feel about becoming a nude, a dancing nude?
Yeah, I really, you know what, let me think about, that's a good question, because we need to take a break, so that was
Okay.
perfect timing,
Okay.
because I need to think about that. That's a
Good, I wanna
question.
hear.
Okay, we'll be back.
Are you feeling overwhelmed or stressed? Remember to take a moment for your mental health. At the Mental Health Moment, we believe in the power of self care and community support. Our mission is to encourage and empower individuals across generations to prioritize their mental well being. Our program called CARE takes you through community, awareness, resources, and education so we can support you every step of the way. Join us at the Mental Health Moment. Visit our website or follow us on social media because your mental health matters. Remember, take a moment for your mental health.
So, welcome back. I'm here with Diane, and she just asked me how I felt about dancing topless as a dancer. And I'm glad we had a
Because-
break so I could think about it.
Good, you went from the ballet to being a showgirl.
Yes, I did. And I didn't really have a choice, right? I came to Vegas after dancing with the ballet company, studying in New York City. I was on a full dance scholarship to Fine Arts Women's College, and I came to Vegas with a friend of mine. Her mom comped us into Hallelujah Hollywood. I went backstage in between shows and introduced myself to Fluff. And she auditioned me on the spot, and unbeknownst to me, Don Arden had been there the night before and he had fired one of the showgirls. So she asked me to do, I did a little dance routine, and then she said, we have an opening for a showgirl, and I can offer you a showgirl position. You'll start rehearsals tomorrow, but I need to see, your breasts.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happened so quickly,
Yeah.
right? So I remember feeling very uncomfortable, but it was, it was Fluff. I mean, Fluff Lacombe,
Yes.
she was the company manager. She made everybody feel so comfortable. She took me into the office. She had me drop my top, and then she said that they're just fine, and, we'd love to offer you the job. And I took the job because I had nothing else planned.
Yeah.
And so, but I remember at first I was a little uncomfortable, and whenever anybody came into town that I knew, I was really uncomfortable.
You were nervous.
Right, but if nobody was in the audience that I didn't know, and you're with your group of gals,
That you
we're all
knew, yeah.
we're all topless,
Yeah.
and the costumes were
So phenomenal.
beautiful.
So phenomenal.
so beautiful.
All
You
those
just
Bob Mackies
felt
and Pete Menefees
so-
and
Yeah, you just
all
felt so
goes.
elegant and so beautiful. So after a while, it was one less costume change, because remember, we could do 10, 12 costume changes
a show.
a show.
Yes.
And so after a while, it was like, okay, one less thing to put. You didn't have to put your bra on, but and you weren't topless every number.
No.
You weren't topless
No.
every number.
Look at all the Tarantella costumes we wore, and
Yeah,
I mean there were so many.
and a lot of just beautiful underwire bras that just
Yeah.
and the bracelets and the headpieces, and there were so many pieces to the
Furs.
costume. You didn't really feel. You didn't.
No.
You didn't really feel it naked.
Well, and the
Or-
thing is about watching a show like that, when I first watched, I think the first show I saw in Vegas was The Folies Bergère in 1971. And I thought, those girls are beautiful. I mean, they're so
Those- they were
statuesque and
beautiful.
elegant. And,
All 6 foot plus. at
oh,
the
and they
Folies
were
Bergère.
just, the Follies showgirls back then were a little curvy, and they were very tanned, and they were centerpieces.
Yes.
And you didn't think about the nudity much because they were. It was such an impact when you saw the
Right.
show. There was so
I-
much.
Yeah, I remember like the first time the curtain opens and you see all these women topless. You're kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
But then
It's
then
over.
after, yeah, then it's just the beauty and the sets and the live orchestras
Yes.
and and just the choreography and
Yes.
the beautiful women and the beautiful men.
It's
I
true.
mean, the men were,
They were naked too.
yeah, they were. They were. We got to wear fishnets. They didn't get to wear fishnets.
That's true.
That's right.
The show boys, showed a lot more than we did,
Yeah, they did.
actually.
Yeah.
So they were beautiful. They were the most beautiful bodies in the world. If you saw a show like that, dancers just had the most gorgeous human form.
Well, we danced with some of the most beautiful women in the world.
And men.
And men, yes. I
Absolutely.
mean, Don Arden and Bluebell traveled all over the world
Absolutely.
looking for a certain type, and I felt so fortunate that I fit that type.
And look how much diversity we had in our shows.
Yes.
I danced with Vimy Kruger in our African number. He's South African.
A lot of English gals from Paris.
Tons of English
French.
girls. And French girls.
Israeli,
That's right.
Tammy, yeah.
Czechoslovakian.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of Australians.
Yeah,
A lot
yes.
of Australians were dancers. So we had that diversity in our show. And I think that was one of the most exciting things about being a showgirl.
Right.
And being in a show, a big spectacular like that.
And we got paid $50 a week more, remember?
We'd made more money
$50 a week.
to be dancing nudes. And back to the last Showgirl movie, one of the
Yes.
things that really bothered me about the writing, which we talked about in our last episode, was that this showgirl that Pamela Anderson played didn't have enough money for a babysitter for her child. That's ridiculous.
No, yeah.
I don't know anybody that made their kids sit in a car while they perform 2 shows a night.
No, I don't either. I don't
That's
either.
not realistic.
And I don't know anybody that gave up their child.
No, I don't either.
I mean,
Well, you worked till you were 5 months pregnant.
I was 5 months pregnant.
Yeah.
I'd like to say Derek danced on stage with me for 5 months, my son.
And I
Yeah.
worked with acrobats that could work till they were 6 months pregnant
Yes.
in the Bahamas.
When I did retire after that, I was 36, but
Yeah.
a lot of the girls would just take, a couple months off.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd be back in the shows.
Yeah, Linda Hahn was
Yes.
a dancing nude at the Lido, and
That's
she
right.
came back right after she had her baby, 2
Yeah.
months later. Yeah, she was back. And she was beautiful.
See, I don't remember us having, we had good benefits, but we didn't have
did.
maternity leave or anything
Oh well, I
like
don't
that.
know.
That's why the
I
girls
didn't
came
know.
back so quickly. But they were
Oh.
dancers too, so they bounced right
Absolutely.
back and they could dance again.
And you never knew.
No.
That was extraordinary to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that piece of your book. I can hardly, well, I've read the whole book, but there's just so much more to it. And
Well, it took 2 weeks after that. I cried for 2 weeks on stage. And it's all in the book, and there are a lot of details about how that came to be.
what, you were 18?
I was 18.
I was 23 when I
I mean, that's still pretty
danced.
young.
It is, but 18's really young.
And I don't know if I was manipulated, but what I did discover through the course of becoming a showgirl is that a very short 3 or 4 months later, I was sent to the Bahamas because I was too tall for the new show. Because our lead dancer was 5'5", and that was unheard of. So there were only 2 nudes in that show because it was a small stage in Montreal at the Chateau Champlain. Gorgeous room. One of the most beautiful rooms you've ever seen. Pictures are in my book. But he sent me to the Bahamas, which was a gigantic stage.
Okay.
At the Casino de Paradis, the Ritas Dancers. And that's when I went into a new show, and I was put in a room with Barbara Beverly, my best friend.
Yes.
So you'll have lots of chapters about the legendary Barbara Beverly,
Oh,
who we all know and love.
Yes. I mean, Barbara
And-
Beverly was,
The it girl.
She
was.
was.
The Las Vegas showgirl
yes.
of all time.
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
was
there
on
have
Billboard.
been-
She was,
Magazine covers.
Yes.
She was on all of the programs, and I have all those photos in the book as well.
oh, that's great.
So-
Yeah, you had some great photos in your book.
So I was actually manipulated from the beginning of arriving in Montreal to be a covered dancer. They were plotting to send the 259 showgirls to the Bahamas all along, and then bringing in shorter nudes.
Oh,
Because their
and
lead
then still-
dancer was Japanese, she was 5'5".
Yeah.
So,
Well, and if you think about it, we danced on some of the largest showroom stages in the world,
well, the Rockettes.
right? And so they wanted big people to carry
Oh,
those
yeah.
big costumes. Whereas the
Absolutely.
smaller stages,
It's true.
they wanted smaller people because your headpieces would probably,
Yes.
you wouldn't see them. They
Yeah.
disappear into the.
Yeah, Miss Bluebell said that to me when I worked in Paris. She said, I actually prefer the curvy showgirls.
Interesting.
Yeah, the dancing nudes.
Yeah.
Because the stages were bigger and there was so much going on, and yeah. But
When
that sent me to the Bahamas, and then I
Wow.
worked there for 3 years. And Barbara and I have been best friends since 1970.
And I was just gonna say, if you talk to Pete Menefee, who was one of our costume designers, he talks about how, Don Arden loved the diversity of the dancing nudes
Oh, yeah.
and just putting those costumes on those women, and they all had to be even more charismatic
Oh, yeah.
than the Bluebells because they were featured.
And the costumes were individually created.
Yes, yeah.
They weren't all the same.
No.
The Showgirl costumes, even the Falco costumes with the white sable fur
Yes.
in the opening of the
Yes.
Alelito show, were so exquisite, and no two were the same, and there were 12 nudes in that show.
Okay,
10. Let's see. 12.
12. Yeah,
12
usually they were
nudes in that
12 or
show.
24. Yeah.
Yeah.
They grouped
Well,
to 12.
Jubilee was bigger.
Jubilee was really big.
And when you worked in Reno, wasn't that stage
Hello Hollywood, hello. Largest showroom stage in the world.
bigger
still
than Radio
to
City Music Hall?
It was it's the size of a football field.
Oh, and Radio City is a city block.
Oh, it
It's
is?
a city block
And-
long. Yeah,
Okay, that's
it's the biggest.
got to be the
It's the
biggest.
showplace of the nation.
Wow. And Hello Hollywood, hello. There were like 250 cast and crew that put that show together every night.
Going back to the movie The Last Showgirl.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that the writer I read in an interview said that when she was younger, she was taken by her parents to see Jubilee. And she said she read that there were 85 performers on stage, 45 people backstage, and there were 15 people in the audience. So that is what propelled her to write her film,
Wow.
is because, and she made it sound as though people were docked and only paid for the number of people that attended, and I don't think that ever
No,
happened.
I don't think that's true.
That's
Reno
not
and
true.
Hello Hollywood, hello. We were down to 4 shows a week, maybe. But you got paid so much per show. I mean,
What year?
What year?
What year was that?
Well, it closed in 1990.
Oh, okay.
And I think what were we getting paid? $50 a show or $100 a show? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But you got paid per show, not how many people.
that
you can't
had
control how many
changed.
people are in the audience.
That had changed, but people's paychecks, we were under contracts.
Right.
So our paychecks weren't, they didn't take something out if somebody tore a costume.
No.
We had dressers to take care of all of that.
Yes, we did.
Wardrobe teams that were, again, people from all over the world
Yeah.
were,
Yeah.
were our dressers and designers. And
Diane, you're going to have to come back another show. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I would love for you to come back tomorrow or next week, whatever. But come back, and I'd love you to read another chapter from your book.
Oh, I'd love to.
And I'd love for you to discuss, that transition of becoming, of going into our next careers.
Yeah.
Because
great.
the last Showgirl did not show that at all. I
No.
mean, the preparation and.
I'd love to,
the
because the
readiness.
whole, the last third of my book is all about those transitions. And I could bring a chapter from how I was, everybody at the Lido at the time was preparing for their next what do you call it when you're pregnant?
Trimester.
Their second trimester
Yeah.
of life.
Yeah. And that was 1990 when that show closed.
And I left in 81.
Oh.
I left in 81, so
Yeah.
I was transitioning into my acting career, and everybody had another career, and we were all around 30. I mean, the cast
Yeah.
was very much near the same age, and I think that, and I talk about it in the book. I'll read
Yes.
it. I'll read from the book.
I would love that. I would love that if you
Okay.
would come back again.
Well, I would love to read from the book
Yes,
too.
I mean, I just enjoy talking to you so much because, well, for one thing, you've written a book, so you've researched it and you've
Yeah.
lived it and you've been there
Yeah,
and you know.
and we have stories.
We have stories.
It's true.
We have stories.
It's true.
So thank you so much for being part of our
been a pleasure
Our-
and an honor.
Yes, and thank you to the audience for being here with us.
Yes.
And we will see you again, and it will be Diane and I again, and she'll be talking about how we're going to transition out now, how we
From one career to the next.
That's right.